I got a story for you Girl Scouts. Once upon a time, there was a magical place where it never rained. The end.
Well, that's our job done. See you next week.
Come on, let's do this properly.
Welcome to Holes, and this sure isn't Girl Scout camp.
Holes is a book that many of us probably read as kids or even studied in school. It was so popular that Disney even made it into a movie.
They actually had enough faith in it to stick it in theaters rather than, banishing it to that dark hole where made-for-TV movies go to die. But we'll get to that eventually.
The movie was a fairly decent success critically and financially, but what we want to know is how it holds up to the book.
So let's dive in and take a look at Holes.
And there will be spoilers.
Camp Green Lake's philosophy is that if you take a bad boy and make him dig holes all day in the hot sun, eventually you'll make him into a good boy.
Well, the sun is shining, but it don't feel good. Don't smile down on this neighborhood.
Camp Green Lake has been around for a while.
The movie and the books follow Stanley Yelnats, a boy who was convicted of stealing famous baseball player Clyde Sweetfeet Livingston's shoes.
Stanley is given the opportunity to choose between Camp Green Lake and Juvie.
And he totally should have taken Juvie.
Stanley has never been to camp before, ever, but he at least expected a lake. Turns out that Camp Green Lake is a bit of a misnomer, and the lake dried up about 100 years ago.
These days, Camp Green Lake vaguely looks like the dark side of the moon.
Yeah, but at least the dark side of the moon has some shade.
Stanley arrives at Camp Green Lake and quickly learns that it isn't Girl Scout camp. Instead, every day, boys have to get up at 4 a.m. and dig a hole with a diameter of 5 feet and 5 feet deep. If you happen to find something interesting in your hole, you might just get the day off.
Kinda sounds like they're looking for something, huh?
No, they're just building character.
So Stanley goes out on the lake day after day and slowly digs more holes until he digs up something interesting, a lipstick tube with the initials KB on it.
This is where the story's 3 storylines come into play. Green Lake was once a thriving town on the edge of a beautiful lake about 100 years ago. People would go out on the lake and were generally pretty happy.
There was a school, a town doctor, a corner store, and even Sam the Onion Man who handed out natural cures made from his onions.
Miss Catherine is the town school teacher and ends up falling in love with Sam.
The third timeline goes back even further to look at Stanley's great-great-grandfather.
A no-good, dirty, rotten pig-stealing one at that.
He accidentally jacked a pig from a gypsy woman named Madame Zeroni, and she cursed his entire family line.
Blaming the dirty, rotten, no-good, pig-stealing grandfather becomes a running joke for Stanley and his family. But you guessed it, it's ultimately the truth.
Stanley in the book is described as a fat kid who is often picked on. In the movie, we get Shia LaBeefcake. Well, he wasn't a beefcake back then.
Well, he was kind of gangly back then, so that could count as awkward.
But does the casting choice ruin Stanley's character?
No, really it doesn't. Stanley's personality is not defined by his physical characteristics, which is refreshing. With that said, none of the characters are defined by their looks, so it's easy to translate to screen.
He's a likable character and does go through some good character development through the story, but he still has his flaws.
The side characters are the other boys who share Tent D with Stanley. We have Zero, X-Ray, Armpit, Twitch, Zigzag, and Magnet. In the book, they're all average teenage boys who are stuck in a bad situation.
In the movie, well...
Excuse me, can you throw that in another pile or something? Because it keeps getting in my hole.
Shut up, shut up. Watch where you moving your dirt at.
Watch where you throwing your dirt, Stanley.
How could this happen to me? I made my mistakes.
They're menacing.
In both versions, they're accepting of Stanley, but the movie plays up on the animosity that wasn't really there in the novel per se.
In the book, they're more bonded. In the movie, everyone but Zero seems like they might cut you in your sleep.
The one thing the movie does do beautifully is portray the 3 adult antagonists. They're the ones who govern the boys, and, well, they're just perfect.
Stanley Yelnats, I just want you to know that you may have done some bad things, but that does not make you a bad kid. I respect you, Stanley.
Meet Mom. He likes to be a therapist, but that doctor's degree he has is really just fake. In the movie, Tim Nelson does a great job.
Next up on our camp's baddie hierarchy list is Mr. Sir. Yep, we love the name too.
His first name is Marion.
He's hard to describe, so how about we let him show you himself?
My name is Mr. Sir. Whenever you speak to me, you will call me by my name. Is that clear?
Yes, Mr. Sir.
You think that's funny? Huh?
No, Mr. Sir.
This isn't a Girl Scout camp. Anybody see anything wrong with my face? Huh? I think I'm kind of purty, don't you?
Yes, sir.
I'm warning you!
Last but not least, we have the warden.
Right over there.
You do not cross the warden. She is one bad.
Excuse me?
We're sorry. The warden was written with so many complex layers, and Sigourney Weaver manages to bring out them all.
If you haven't guessed it by now, Camp Green Lake is a front. The warden set it up to dig for the buried treasure of Kissin' Kate Barlow, something her family has been doing for almost as long as the treasure's been buried.
Kind of a brilliant front, isn't it? All that free labor? I just want to know how she managed to get the licensing from the government.
Other important characters include Hector Zeroni. He becomes Stanley's bestie at camp, even though he's distantly related to the gypsy that cursed Stanley's family.
Camp Green Lake is where we get most of our story, and the land itself seems to be connected to the stories. The land is populated by yellow-spotted lizards, and they are the most dangerous thing on the lake bed. Here's a good rule to remember about rattlesnakes and scorpions. If you don't bother them, they won't bother you. Usually. Being bitten by a scorpion or even a rattlesnake is not the worst thing that can happen to you. You won't die. Usually. Sometimes a camper will try to be bitten by a scorpion or even a small rattlesnake. Then he will get to spend a day or two recovering in his tent instead of having to dig a hole out on the lake. But you don't want to be bitten by a yellow-spotted lizard. That's the worst thing that can happen to you. You will die a slow and painful death. Always. If you get bitten by a yellow-spotted lizard, you might as well go into the shade of the oaks and lie in the hammock. There's nothing anyone can do to you anymore. Even in the movie, they're pretty friggin' terrifying.
Aw, it's kinda cute.
Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Holy crap! Funny enough, it was Sam the Onion Man who figured out that yellow-spotted lizards don't like onions. It was also his death that caused the lake to dry up.
Sam and Catherine fell in love, but because of the town's racism, he's murdered. Out of grief, Catherine becomes the famous outlaw Kissin' Kate Barlow.
It's her lipstick tube that Stanley finds, and it's her treasure that the warden is looking for.
Eventually, Stanley and Zero are forced to run away from Camp Green Lake, and Stanley takes care of Zero, and by looking after him, breaks the curse on the Yelnats family.
Stanley's family is able to put a bit of money together to fight the charges against Stanley.
We get a really smart face-off between Stanley and the warden, which results in the end of Camp Green Lake and opening of, you guessed it, a Girl Scouts camp.
The book sets up its 3 interconnected plots brilliantly, and they're all essential to the story. It could go very wrong, but in this book it's perfection. It's so tight and well written that it'll amaze you.
The movie goes about it differently than the book, as all adaptations have to, yet it's still very effective at telling the story.
Yeah, there are 1 or 2 rough patches, but overall the story's really well done.
The soundtrack is fun, it fits the story, and it's really catchy. One of our few complaints is that someone got a little bit cheesy with the editing.
One of the best scenes in the novel is the romance progression between Sam and Catherine. In the book, the scenes are beautiful.
You can almost feel the characters' loneliness and their need to connect with each other, despite what everyone says. Well, it was heartbreaking.
Blinded by the eyes of you. Time kept on moving.
In the movie, the scene was ruined. I mean, really listen to the music in that background. We went from a scene that gives you chills in the novel to a made-for-TV soap opera.
Well, I feel
So despite few complaints with the movie, it holds up extremely well. And the book, even though the writing style is a little juvenile, it's enjoyable nonetheless.
If you're looking for a text with some fun and a lot of depth, this is the one for you.
And if you're looking for a fun and clever movie with some great acting, go and watch the movie.
And stay tuned for our next review, Falling for Hamlet.
But you said you said we wouldn't have to. You can't do this to me. Not that. No, God, no.
Beats, man. Oh, that's what we're doing. We're singing. Y'all know nothing about that. Watch me. Watch me. Come on, Ed. Come on, Ed. Prove myself.
Dig it up, dig it. Dig it up, dig it up, dig it. Dig it up,
Two suits, two tokens in hand. I got no respect, cause I'm the new man. Got my shot.
Ain't the Girl Scout selling cookies?